Think of that one person who completely exhausts your patience and drains your energy. The one whose mere presence in a room makes your jaw clench in silent anger. It could be a coworker, an acquaintance, or even a stranger on the internet. You do not just dislike them. You feel a profound, irrational, and burning irritation. Every word they speak feels like a deliberate grating against your own nervous system. Every choice they make feels like an offensive violation of your personal moral code. You find yourself constantly analyzing their flaws, dissecting their behavior, and tracking their mistakes. You secretly complain about them to anyone who will listen, desperately seeking external validation. You construct an elaborate mental courtroom where you are the judge and they are guilty. You convince yourself that your hatred is logically justified, that they are simply awful people. You tell yourself they are too arrogant, too lazy, too selfish, or too loudly insecure. But if you pause and examine this feeling with brutal, unapologetic psychological honesty, something shifts. You will notice that the intensity of your anger is entirely disproportionate to reality. They have not actually ruined your life. They have not committed any unforgivable crime. Yet they occupy a massive, rent-free space in the darkest corners of your mind. Why does this specific individual trigger such a violent emotional reaction within your body? The truth is deeply uncomfortable, and it completely shatters the illusion of your righteousness. You do not hate them for who they are. You hate them for what they reflect. This obsessive hatred carries a devastating psychological consequence that most people completely fail to realize. By focusing all your negative energy outward, you are slowly poisoning your own internal landscape. You believe that judging them makes you superior, more refined, or morally elevated above them. But resentment is the psychological equivalent of drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. Every time you fixate on their perceived flaws, you are bleeding your own cognitive resources. You become chained to the very person you claim to despise. They become your master. Your mood is dictated by their actions. Your conversations are dominated by their latest mistakes. In your attempt to distance yourself from them, you have actually become intimately entangled. You are completely trapped in a cycle of toxic rumination that serves absolutely no purpose. Furthermore, this constant state of judgment creates a thick, impenetrable armor around your own heart. It makes you bitter, cynical, and deeply hyper-vigilant about the behavior of everyone around you. You start seeing these despised traits everywhere, scanning the world for reasons to be annoyed. You lose the capacity for empathy, not just for them, but ultimately for yourself, because the harsh, unforgiving lens through which you view them is actually a mirror. The judgment you hurl at them is the exact same judgment you fear receiving. You are projecting a movie onto a blank screen, screaming at the characters you created. And as long as you stare at the screen, you will never turn around to see the projector. You will remain blind to the absolute psychological truth that is staring you in the face. To decode this phenomenon, we must return to the profound work of Carl Jung. Jung identified this exact mechanism and called it psychological projection. It is a defense strategy. Projection occurs when we subconsciously take our own unacceptable traits and assign them to others. Remember the concept of the shadow, the dark bag we drag behind us, filled with repressed desires. The ego is incredibly fragile. It refuses to admit that it contains laziness, arrogance, or greed. Admitting these dark traits exist within you would cause an unbearable level of psychological pain. So your subconscious mind plays a brilliant trick. It exports the darkness to the outside world. It finds a suitable candidate, someone who displays a slight hint of that specific trait, and then it magnifies it. It projects your entire repressed shadow onto that unfortunate person. If you passionately hate someone for being lazy, it is often your repressed desire to rest. If you despise someone for being arrogantly loud, you are likely suppressing your own desire to be seen. If you are disgusted by someone's selfishness, you sacrifice too much and secretly resent it. They are living out the very impulses that you have strictly forbidden yourself to experience. Your intense irritation is actually a twisted form of deep, unacknowledged psychological envy. You are furious that they give themselves the permission to act out what you must tightly control. The trait that bothers you the most in another person is the exact trait you need to integrate. They are not your enemy. They are a perfectly designed mirror, reflecting your deepest insecurities. As long as you hate them, you are fiercely avoiding the painful work of facing yourself. The moment you recognize this mechanism, everything changes. The illusion of your superiority shatters completely. Healing requires the terrifying process of withdrawing the projection and bringing the darkness back home. The next time you feel that familiar burning irritation toward that specific person, you must stop. Do not analyze their behavior. Instead, turn the spotlight completely inward and ask the painful question. Where does this exact trait exist within me? In what ways am I doing the exact same thing? This requires a level of radical self-honesty that most people will avoid for their entire lives. It will humble you. It will strip away your arrogance and force you to accept your flaws. But in this profound humbling, you will find an extraordinary and lasting psychological freedom. When you finally acknowledge that the darkness is inside you, the other person loses all power. They stop being a monster, and they return to being just a flawed, ordinary human being. The obsessive mental loops will quiet down. The heavy burden of judgment will finally drop. You will reclaim the massive amount of cognitive energy that you were wasting on hatred. Integrating the shadow means you no longer have to frantically police the behavior of the world. You develop genuine compassion, not because you are morally superior, but because you realize you are equally flawed. You are no longer terrified of the dark because you have finally learned to see in it. The enemy outside was never real. It was only an unrecognized piece of your own soul. Stop looking through the window and start looking directly into the mirror. Embrace the shadow. You will never be held hostage by the unconscious behavior of another person ever again.